All right, welcome everybody to Open Market. I'm Eric Franchi. Joe's got the week off, and I'm joined today by Aaron Goldman, CMO of Mediaocean. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm good. Long time listener, first time caller, as they say. Long time sponsor, too. I think we
Sir,
had what a 12 week run or so.
you did, you did. You gave Joe a challenge of unique creative every week. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, it all started with some friendly banter on X. I believe
Exactly.
was the go-to line. And yes, I guess we ended up running. Yeah, I think each week for 12 weeks. And I
Yeah,
kind of I challenged Joe to sort of make fun of you at the end of each ad read, and he delivered.
for 12 weeks straight. Yeah, it was a very painful period of my life. Thanks for reminding me. So I'm just getting back from Chicago, your hometown.
Sweet home.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, the when the weather's good in springtime Chicago, there is like nothing like it.
It is, yeah, the best city on earth for 3 months of the year. We're excited to have Marketecture Live coming. That'll be
Yeah,
just at the end of the window before Chicago turns into the winter doldrums. So it should be a good time.
yeah, awesome. So we're going to talk about a few things today. Aaron as CMO, Aaron as CMO of Mediaocean, which is like one of the most interesting and kind of fascinating companies in ad tech, AI, and some other stuff. But before we get going, you and I have known each other for, brace yourself, by my count, a quarter of a century.
But yeah, that math checks out.
How is that possible when you look 25?
Well, I appreciate that. I don't do martial arts, but I've got my own ways of staying in shape and keeping myself young and spry.
When we first met and started working together, it was before Mike Cassian and I launched Undertone. We were just like, two guys buying media. And you were a big like publisher network partner of ours. What was the name of the company?
At the time, it was L90,
That's
and I
right.
believe you were Intercept Interactive, right?
Yeah. Intercept Interactive. That's right. I was trying to jog my memory and ask you to jog your memory about like a funny story from back then. And I think you came up with one. Quickly, run through it.
Well, so actually, I'll give you two. One, back to Cassidy for a second. So that, of course, was the AOL Instant Messenger era, right? And so,
Yeah.
yes, sure, we did email. We were still faxing insertion orders back and forth back then. But then on AIM, it was like the land grab to get a good handle. And I remember like Cassidy was like Cassidy with like six
Five
S's or
S's.
something. Yeah, there you go.
I'll never forget it.
Um, and so I kind of followed his lead. My nickname in college had been G Dog, but of course that was taken. So it was then G Dog with two G's, three G's, four G's. I eventually got G Dog with eight G's because that was the only one available. But
I
then I'd
remember
be
this.
yeah, and we were, that's how we would chat and do business with each other. We'd be, so L90 was kind of, it was an ad network. It eventually merged with DoubleClick Media when
Mhm.
DoubleClick got out of the media business. We sold them our ad server. So we all know who got the better end of that deal. And then we became Max Online. But our biggest client, I think mutually, it was a shared client, was Orbitz. And
Yeah,
back in the day when Orbitz launched, I mean, they were the king of the pop-ups. They were popping all over the web. And you were, I think, managing as sort of like an agency type relationship, managing the buying
exactly.
for them. And
Exactly.
yeah, and so it started with um, me going through you to get the Orbitz deals. So I started my career in sales, and we can kind of come back to that. But I definitely think that helped for my future in marketing. But yeah, so as a salesperson, I would get orders from you. We'd run it across our network. These were pop ups, pop unders. We popped everywhere. And at some point, I kind of got hip to the fact. Okay, so Orbitz was based in Chicago, literally like a couple blocks from my office. Mike Stein, shout out to Mike Stein, the guy who ran the digital team there,
Shout
lived
out
actually
Stein.
like he lived a couple blocks from me. Turned out we both had an affinity for kosher food, and so we developed our own relationship. I do think I eventually cut you and Cassidy out, and I'm sorry for that. But I think I gave you, we did plenty of business together. Then I started going direct to Orbitz to get my deals as opposed to through you guys. But by that time, I
I don't
think,
remember this actually. I
oh
have
yeah,
nothing but
no,
fond memories. We got to
no,
get Mike on the phone.
it was all good. It was all good. It was on the up and
Yeah,
up. And I think you guys were then starting to pivot into what would eventually become Undertone anyway,
that's
and
right.
doing different types of formats, kind of not the agency business so more, just kind of using all that inventory you got really good at buying, and then turning it into essentially a network with higher impact units. Right? Was that kind
Yes,
of
sir.
the story there?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the origin story. But what happened? You caused the SEC to look at L90 because it was a public company from one of our deals, right?
Oh, well, okay. First of all, it wasn't me. So, so I I didn't cause anything. But so what ended up happening, I'll make this long story short. So L90 did get investigated and indicted for SEC fraud. Essentially, the executives, a couple of them, were cooking the books. So Home Store, if you remember them,
Yeah.
also went down, and they were doing round trip transactions. So basically, Home
Yeah.
Store would do an insertion order for $1 million at the end of the quarter in advertising so that they could make their number. And we would then do an IO with them reciprocally for $1 million. Both sides recognize the revenue, and whether or not we actually served any impressions kind of didn't matter because it was sort of the spirit of how those deals were being done and the quid pro quo. And so that was like one example that eventually came crashing down. But in the process, when the DOJ was investigating this, I got a call, and they were digging into, they had subpoenaed and gotten access to all the insertion orders, and they were going through and looking at them, and some of the bigger ones were these Orbitz deals coming out of Chicago. To be clear, I was just the sales planner then, so my job was to
And
like
they were
get
and they were not coming out of New York. They were
correct.
coming out
Yep,
of
yep.
Chicago now.
Yep. So we were so you were clean at that point. But essentially they were looking at the deals and saying, okay, these deals were sold on it was a CPP, cost per pop, right? So rather than do a
Yeah.
$50 CPM, we would do a 5 cent CPP. And then in the terms in the insertion order, they would have a number that would say basically um, L90 will deliver this many pop-ups and this many conversions. And so essentially in the writing, it was, trying to, they were trying to understand if this was like a guaranteed deal, how it should have been paid, how the revenue would have been recognized. And so I kind of walked them through the process. It turned out this was not one of the bad deals, but they were still in the process
No.
of kind of going through everything we did to understand how the business worked and which deals were above board and which were not.
Oh, wow. So teaching the SEC media math was the job.
Yeah. And now, thankfully, we've got Ari Papero to do that.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into the good stuff. Tell me about the transition from sales to marketing. That was actually one of the things I wanted to touch on.
Yeah, so I went to school for advertising at the University of well, I went to school for journalism at the University of Illinois. After
Oh wow.
one semester, I burnt out on writing papers, and there was one other major in the College of Communications, which was advertising. So I said, all right, let's try this. Fell in love with it. Got a job at my school paper, the Daily Illini, selling print at the time. We had just launched the website, but I still remember $7.85 per column inch on print. And then for digital, we had no idea how to price it. CPM wasn't a thing yet, so we are still trying to back into like a CPI rate that advertisers were used to buying. Um, at any rate, in school, I was part of a fraternity. And coming out of school, one of my fraternity brothers named Matt Spiegel, who I'm sure you and many of our listeners here will
Shout out
know.
to Matt. Yeah.
Yeah. So Matt hired me out of school at L90. He was like a couple years, well, he was and still is a couple years older than me. And he was at the time running their direct marketing group. So he brought me into L90. I was started as a sales planner, where again, my job was to like get insertion orders off of AOL Instant Messenger or the fax machine, carrier pigeon, however they came in, and then I would basically hand key them into the ad server, and then I would check manually to make sure they were delivering, send out the invoice, etc. After about a year of that, I got promoted into an actual sales job where I was working with the local agencies and brands, and we sold, I mean, at L90, we sold everything. We talked about the pop-ups. We're doing a lot of email list brokering was a big one back then. Of course, the banner ads, the skyscrapers, the shashkalis, the eye blasters. You name it, we sold it. And so after about 5 years, the company, so I mentioned it had merged with DoubleClick Media to become Max Online. That's, by the way, where I met Bill Wise, who is now CEO here at Mediaocean. And because he came over with the DoubleClick side of the deal.
Right.
And then we got bought. Let's see if I got the history right. So we got bought, Max Online got bought by the Excite Network. Excite Network got bought by um, Ask Jeeves, who got bought by IAC, and that was where I exited at that point.
Okay.
Um, I had started towards the end of that run. That's when Google was coming up. Overture, right? Pre Yahoo was a big business for search, and I was selling a ton of search business. And back then, you didn't have search agencies or bid management technologies, so we were basically just brokering clicks on search the same way like an ad network would broker banners or pop-ups. And I was getting a ton of business out of Starcom IP in Chicago. Shout out to the folks there. And basically, they didn't have a team to manage search, so they would come to me, and I would get basically an insertion order for, let's call it a dollar per click. Network Solutions, I think, was our biggest client. They were a domain registrar. And then we would turn around and we would bid on Overture, on Google, somewhere less than a dollar.
Sure.
And I haven't gotten any calls from any DOJ about the margins on those deals, but let's just say they were strong to very strong.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and uh, 80% of my business at this point was now just brokering search clicks. When
Hmm.
Ask Jeeves bought us, they said, that's awesome that you're running millions of dollars in search. Run all that business on Ask Jeeves. Don't put it on Google and Overture. And I was like, yo, Butler, if I bought every single keyword, like no matter how related it was to my client's business, well, I couldn't fill these orders. You just don't have enough traffic. So it actually worked out. It was amicable. I left and went to start Resolution Media back with Matt Spiegel again. And we brought the business that had been the search business that Ask Jeeves didn't want over with us. So that was kind of how Resolution started. At Resolution, my role went, you know how sales works inside of agencies, right? They don't have salespeople, they have business development, and you end up doing a lot of pitching. We ended up, so my role kind of morphed a little from biz dev and then into marketing as well. And then Resolution got bought by Omnicom. And that's when the role really changed. Now I was, a full on agency person, still hawking search clicks. I remember, and stop me if this is not interesting. We're way on a tangent here. I feel like without Joe, we'll probably, get way off the rails. But this is fun.
No, Joe would just keep talking. Yeah,
Yeah,
the question is how sales to marketing, sales to CMO,
yeah.
and how does that sort of inform your perspective?
Yeah, got it. So I'll share one story from the Omnicom search days, and that'll bridge us into the answer here. So I remember being in front of McDonald's was a big client of OMD's,
Sure.
and I think Peter Sterling was running marketing for them, and we were in their conference room in Oak Brook, Illinois, and it was we brought the full team out to basically sell them on buying search. They were spending millions on TV and everything else, and so I would kind of trot out there. I had a foam board with a mock-up of the Google search results for the keyword hamburger. And I showed them like McDonald's was like down at the bottom of the page. And I was like, look, we can, through the magic of, search engine marketing, we can move you from the bottom up to the top. And I took like the Velcro piece of their listing, put it up at the top, ta-da, it was like a big finish. And I was so proud of myself. And Peter goes, why on earth would anybody search for a hamburger on Google? So here, get this though. My answer, maybe because they're hungry.
Amazing.
He got a chuckle in the room, did not get the business. So what I did realize then, and here's the key insight, and bringing it back to the question was the you're not going, you can't win, you can't sell, you can't build a business on just facts alone or proof points or product capabilities, right? You have to tell a story. You have to win the connect on a more emotional level, not just a rational level. Like, sure,
Right.
of course you want to be number one, but no, you need to understand the motivation of the person on the other side and how you can persuade them. And that's the guts of marketing, whether we're talking B2B or B2C. It's persuasive communications, it's storytelling, it's being able to take things that are tangible and make them interesting, relevant, create the energy, especially in B2B, where it can be super boring sometimes. But at the end of the day, people don't buy from companies, they still buy from people. And so if you can connect on that human level, that makes all the difference. And now fast forward to coming out of Omnicom, um, my my next move was actually to start a company, but we'll come back to that. Jumping to marketing, my first role in marketing was for Kenshu. Now they're called Sky, and I
Right.
took on the CMO role there. And that was, well, actually, I know exactly. That was 15 years ago because my twins were born there, and now they're 15. And I still have a shirt where they're in little onesies. One said Ken, and the other said Shoe, and they're like,
Amazing.
this was like maybe three months old. But at any rate, what I brought to that role and every subsequent role in leading marketing for ad tech companies is that understanding of persuasive communications, understanding that our job is ultimately still sales. Our business card may say marketing, but we're in sales. In fact, everyone in the company is in sales. We just execute on that playbook a little bit differently. Our role is a little bit different in driving to those outcomes.
Yeah, yeah, well said. Back to this idea of people buying from people, even in B2B. Joe and I pound the table about this all the time. You're unique in that as a CMO in ad tech, there aren't many with like a very public presence and public profile. They tend to be almost behind the scenes, which intuitively doesn't make a lot of sense. Why are you so like forward leaning, visible, out there in the public, particularly on socials?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in the power of personal brand, and that goes back to I skipped over it, but the time between Omnicom and Kenshu was a couple years running my own company called Connectual,
I'm
and
not sure. Yeah, I remember.
essentially
Yeah,
yeah, so the idea there, I called it digital marketing matchmaking. All right, so I was doing a little bit of like business development, helping companies connect to do deals. I did a little bit of like executive recruiting, so helping candidates and companies kind of find each other. But the tagline for the company was, "It's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you." And that whole idea is, you've heard the term like your network is your net worth. Like I'm a
sure.
full-hearted believer in that. And at the core of that is your personal brand. So how do people think about you when you're not in the room? And at the time, it was a personal level. I was building a personal company, so my personal brand and my company were one and the same. But I kind of then took that with me to Kenshu, now Sky, and now and of course here at Mediaocean, where a big part of the value you can bring to a company is your personal brand. It's your voice. It's your audience. And so when you bring me in to this kind of role, sure, you get someone who can manage all the nuts and bolts of marketing, but you also get someone who's got a point of view, who's got that built-in audience. Joe's always talking about kind of executive evangelism, and
Yeah,
that's kind of the idea. And so with that doesn't mean that the company brand and the personal brand have to be one and the same. In fact, oftentimes they're not. Here at Mediaocean, they're not. Mediaocean is a company that's been around for 60 years, and it's got a very foundational role in the industry. And so my personal brand is maybe a little more snarky. It's a little more fun loving, a little more freewheeling,
yeah.
freestyling, free loving, and so it meshes well when they can come together. And that's part of why I continue to invest both in the personal brand, and then essentially I'm renting that personal brand to the company for the benefit of our overall enterprise value.
Sure. Specifically, like, what do you do tactically to build your personal brand? And maybe, how can other CMOs, who, again, I think this is like a weird thing in ad tech that I can't name too many other ad tech CMOs besides you. What can they learn from?
Well, I would say the biggest thing is developing a point. You got to be a student of the game, as
Yeah.
it were, right? And so you got to invest in understanding the business, spending time with your product team, spending time with customers, being in market, going to events, not just to make sure that you're trade show booth looks great, and all the swag was came out to spec. But talking to people, understanding what's going on in the industry, what are the key conversations, so that way you can develop a point of view on it, and then of course share that point of view. So the obvious example is LinkedIn. That's something that you and Joe, talk about all the time. Critical channel right now, and so publishing there again. Joe's really good about saying like, don't overthink it. Just be consistent, and I definitely subscribe to that. So continue to put stuff out on LinkedIn and mixing it in. Like, yes, a few of my posts are definitely overtly self-promotional for the company. It's my job. I got to do it. I'm going to do it. But mixing those in with personal points of view, and then also stuff that's tangential to the business. So, for example, I do trick shots. It's a hobby of mine. I've got a YouTube channel. I'll plug it here. It's called Jude Perfect.
Nice.
Jude Perfect. I'm the Jewish Jude Perfect, so that's where the name comes from.
Amazing.
And so, yeah, so I do trick shots, and so every now and then I'll do one in a corporate, sort of setting. So, for example, at Possible, there was Hoops and Ad Tech, which was a group that was put together. It was a lot of fun. They're now doing this at other tent poles. So, anyone who's interested in basketball, I would suggest you to sign up and get out to the next run. But I went out with, there was these Possible jerseys that a sponsor had made. I put one on, did a couple trick shots, posted that on LinkedIn. I've done, if anyone was at the Basis Oasis at the Fountain Blue in Miami during Possible, massive takeover that they had. And their campaign was show us your briefs, right? As like a funny way to like,
Yeah.
if you give them a brief, their AI will turn it into, a media plan. And they were actually embroidering briefs in the blue bar in the lobby of the Fountain Blue. So I got some embroidered briefs that said Jude Perfect on it. I put them on and made a trick shot. And yes, I posted it to LinkedIn. Probably the only time you'll see anybody in their boxers posting on LinkedIn. So it's a little bit of you got to have fun with it. You got to do a mix of kind of the corporate stuff, the personal stuff. LinkedIn is a big channel. Podcasting, as you well know, you're now the host of what, three pods, Eric?
Just two. Just two.
Oh, just two. All right.
We
And
haven't launched the third one yet.
got it. Okay, but that's another great example. Either going on and doing that. I've actually, if I haven't done too much self promotion, I'll throw one more. I'm actually launching a podcast. It's called
Awesome.
Frap Rap with G Dog, and yes, it is all eight G's. It's a throwback to my to the actually the era we were just talking about, and so season one's going to be all tracking down everyone from Starcom IP, who was part of that foundational group at the beginning of the internet era.
Oh,
And each
so
week I'm going
cool.
to have on a new guest. But yes, so that should be fun. So that's another example of a distribution platform. And again, it doesn't have to be like, let's just come on and talk about AI, right? It's like,
Yeah.
hey, let's connect as humans. What are you up to now? What's your journey been like? That type of thing.
Awesome. What part of your success do you attribute your profile picture being at a 45-degree angle to?
So that's another great example of just you got to be creative and find ways to stand out. Um, LinkedIn can be boring, B2B marketing can be boring. And so anything
So
you can
just
do,
rotate yourself.
I tell in a feed, when you're scrolling through the feed and you're seeing post, 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 and all of a sudden you see, one dude looking at you, funny sideways, it's going to slow the scroll.
Well said. All right. So CMO role, notoriously a short tenured one. We always hear these stats, right? Like average CMO, is 18 months. You have a long tenure. So Mediaocean, which, as a company has just been killing it. I think you've been there now as CMO for 6 years.
Yes. And if you count my tenure at 4C, which got acquired by Mediaocean, I'm up to 11.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. What's your secret?
Um, well, diet and exercise. No, just kidding. So here's what I would say. Oh, and by the way, 11 years at Mediaocean, I'm still a baby. All right. The company's been around
I
since
know. I want to talk about that.
1967.
Yeah. I want to
Yeah.
talk about that after, but absolutely.
Yeah. And so listen, dude, it's cliched, but the saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Like
Sure.
I'm all in on that. Yes, I love ad tech. It's super nerdy to say, but I know some people listening will be able to kind of identify with that.
Mhm.
And yeah, okay, yes. So yes, we're not saving lives here, right? But I do believe that ad tech and advertising in this industry makes an impact. A little story. So during COVID, my wife worked in healthcare in a hospital setting. So, she was going in every day, front lines, seeing, crazy stuff. She'd come home, kind of tell me what's going on. We lost a patient, and say, okay, and she'd be like, how's your day? Well, I had all these Zoom calls and, oh, and we lost a client. And it's like, okay, clearly she won every time. But yes, it's ad tech, but we do make a difference, right? Like advertising serves, advertising serves GDP. Like we grow businesses, we help businesses employ people, we help businesses get goods to consumers. We fund journalism. So we do play an important role in the world. So part of why I'm been in this role for so long, and hopefully we'll keep doing it for a long time to come, is I enjoy it. I believe in what we do as an industry. And then, as you would say, so that's thing one. Thing two is, did I get that right? Is that an Ericism?
It
Thing
is.
two, too bad Joe's not on because I had so many to throw back in his face, but that's okay. We'll save that. By the way, if I apologize to the listeners, I'm sure I talk really fast. I listen to Open Market and all my pods at 2x speed.
Oh
So
man.
then I talk at 2x, and let me tell you, if you think Joe is a lot at 1x, crank him up to 2, man. It gets exciting. At any rate, thing two is in this role, I get to be very creative, and so beyond just the blocking and tackling of managing the marketing funnel and MQLs and SQLs and all that, we talked about how you need to connect at that emotional level, and so every day, every week, every quarter, we're coming up with new and interesting ideas. Our team, we call ourselves the Marketables within Mediaocean, and whether it's we've done things like flash mobs, we did prank videos, we did a money machine, at a tentpole event. Of course, podcasts, Substacks. We even ran a Super Bowl ad, and those are things that like it's it being able to concept new ways to kind of create that energy and emotion. It's a fun challenge that keeps me engaged, but then that also I think brings value to the company, right? So it's a two-sided coin when you ask, the secret to staying in the role. One part is like enjoying it and being fulfilled. The other side is making sure the company feels good about what you're doing, your contributions, and the value you're delivering there.
I get it. Well said. Let's talk about MediaOcean. So, MediaOcean formed in 2012 from the merger of MediaBank and Donovan Data Solutions. Donovan Data Solutions, to your point, was founded in 1967. So, this will be next year a 60-year-old ad tech company, which is insane. Maybe Viant is number two. Bill Wise has historically kind of called it the plumbing of ad tech. So it's this interesting dichotomy, right? Because you're this like super creative guy. You just rattled off like five like really innovative things that you've done with a company that your CEO, who I rank as top five, top three in the game, calls it like plumbing. So very not sexy, but you've made it sexy. So how do you solve for that?
All right, so yeah, note to the production team. This is where you cue up the JT bringing sexy back. But um, we're we're in this point where what was once sort of super boring, the infrastructure side of the business, the plumbing, the electricity. To your point, Bill likes to talk about that. Has now become super critical in the age of AI, right? Because without that sort of underlying foundation, the data taxonomies, the connective tissues, and the integrations, you can't really do anything with AI. Agents are great, but if they can't act on and connect to the points where the ads are being built, delivered, measured, et cetera, they're useless. And so we have turned sort of what if you think about like plumbing and electricity, it's one of those things where like you're only aware of it when it's broken and you're mad
Right.
about it. So
Right.
for a long time, that was kind of, where Mediaocean's at, super critical, but people didn't really feel it. It was sort of under the surface, right? Prisma, the core system of record product, is served as sort of the back office function for the agencies for many years. In fact, I think it was season three of Mad Men when they wheel in the massive computer into the agency,
I remember.
and they kind of give it its own conference room, and they're like gawking at it. That was Michael Donovan. He literally wheeled in the first computer to the agency, and that was the business, Donovan Data Systems.
So
And
crazy.
so yeah, so at any rate, what we've taken now, and back to this idea of electricity, is we're recasting that. And so if you think about our position in the industry, we're talking about how in a world of AI, that connectivity becomes so important. And we're using this sort of allegory of Thomas Edison, right? He didn't change the world by inventing the light bulb, right? He changed the world by creating the electrical grid. The light bulbs don't
Right.
work unless they're plugged into the grid. And we think of AI and advertising and Mediaocean's role in the same way. We are the grid that's lighting up AI and advertising. Yes, we have our agents. Other people have agents. Agents are great, but they only work if they're connected to a grid that's able to extract the value and connect the dots. And so we've kind of gone from, so we're back to telling Bill, yeah, hey, do your wise words, keep talking about electricity. That's actually great for us right now. It's not, and we found what we think is a story that people can kind of identify with and understand the value intrinsically. And when we come out to places like, Cannes, for example, you'll see this idea of the grid, and we'll be casting a little spotlight, from our boat onto the dock, lighting up
Cool.
the industry.
Cool. That's awesome. Media Ocean, if I think about, kind of word association, right? This idea of this like plumbing and necessary infrastructure is one thing. I also think about acquisitions. And one of the things I'm a fan of about Mediaocean and Bill is like you guys don't do little acquisitions. You do big acquisitions. So acquired Innovid for I think it was EV of 500 million or more. Acquired
Yep.
Flash Talking, private company, but I know kind of similarly like large nine-figure acquisitions. I love that stuff. It probably gives you a lot to work with from a marketing perspective. So how do you think about acquisitions as a marketer? And number one, like the moment of announcement, you're right, like making sure that lands correctly, because these things can, if they're understood in terms of the impact, they can go great. If people don't understand, want but then number two, like intelligently making them part of the story going forward. How do you think about just acquisitions generally?
Yeah, and so to your call out 2012 when Donovan and MediaBank came together to form Mediaocean, I think there've been 15 acquisitions since then. And so
Hmm.
we actually at CES this year we created a whole Mediaocean scape, right? So we
I
took
remember.
Terry's Lumascape and we
Shout out
created
Terry.
uh, yeah, and folks won't be able to see this on the pod, but I'm holding up my Mediaocean scape pillow that we had it made up. But essentially, in every
Nice.
category between the brand and the publisher, we've acquired a company that can help uh, fill that point solution. And what the challenge then becomes for me as a marketer for Mediaocean as a company is at each point when we've bought a company that does that thing, you're competing against an entire Lumascape of companies who only do that one thing. And so we have to compete there. There are decision makers, there are budgets just for those solutions. Things like ad serving, things like dynamic creative, things like verification. Each of those has an entire group of companies competing there. And buyers. And so we have to make sure that we are communicating our value prop and winning at that point while also telling the story of the whole. Right, we like to say 1+1 is 3. Here, and this is Tvika Netter, the Innovid CEO, loves to call it 1+1 is 11. Right? How can you unlock the exponential value? Because if you keep all those pieces together and build your stack around our component pieces, you actually get something that's quite powerful. And so then translate that into marketing. We've had to make a conscious decision on the spectrum of being a branded house versus a house of brands. Right, so a branded house, you think Adobe, right, where everything is Adobe this, Adobe that, versus something like a Google, where Alphabet is a parent company. You have Google, you have YouTube, and they're more of a house of brands. Um, when we evaluated that decision for ourselves, the main questions that we asked were, first of all, who does each product serve, right? Who's the customer set? Are they different or is there overlap? In our world, Mediaocean, going back to the Donovan days, primarily served the agency segment. Within the agencies, it was primarily a decision made by the financial teams, right? Because it sort of played a back office accounting software role. But then the users of the product were the media, planners doing hands-on keyboard, processing the buys, and then it would go to billing, et cetera. You talk about like 4C, which is where I came from. Our customer set was social teams. social buyers, and then increasingly into what became converged TV. Flash talking, Innovid, it's ad operations. And by the way, it's a lot more serving the brands directly interfacing on the platform rather than the agencies or sometimes along with their agencies. And so as we brought in each new company, if we did 15 since 2012, the first 10 were all, it was the Prisma of the Netherlands, the Prisma of France, the Prisma of Germany. And so that made sense. Keep it a branded house. Just call them what's now Prisma. But once we started adding these different functionalities that serve different segments, we didn't want to erode that brand equity that had been built for many years in market, and we needed to compete at those points with other point solutions. So we kept the names. We're a house of brands. Mediaocean's the parent company, and Flash Talking and Innovid was a pretty easy decision. They serve the same space. There, it was the number two and the number three ad server coming together. So it made sense to combine those names. You had to decide between Flash Talking or Innovid. That also, or we could have created a new name, but I don't think the world needs another, Xander or something that you have to like learn and try to understand. And then between Flash Talking and Innovid, it was actually a pretty easy decision. Innovid as a public company, the ticker was CTV. So of course that's the category where the growth is. Innovid as a name, was chosen because it's innovation and video put
Hmm.
together, which are still two critical parts of growth in advertising. Flash Talking was, of course, named for Flash, which is now a deprecated format on the web. Although, if you ask the kids, they think of the DC Comics character, which actually isn't a bad association. But then it was Marketecture Live 1, where we relaunched the new Innovid. We had Ad Tech God, come down from the heavens and bless the union. At any rate, so yeah, so branded house, bringing those things together, trying to tell the story, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, but each part needs to be worthy on its own and be able to be understood by the buyer for that segment.
That was a fantastic walkthrough. Thank you. Um, let's talk about AI, not in the ad tech use case, but in the marketing use case. So, like, how is AI shaking up what you do as a marketer, if at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's at this point pretty much part of every step of the workflow. So whether we're kind of building out our segments or the messaging, lead scoring, drip campaigns, those are sort of the guts of account-based marketing. There's a lot of places where AI plugs in there, and then whether we're doing uh, attributing performance, trying to measure ROI. Yes, we actually do hold ourselves accountable to ROI. We could go on a whole different track down there, but um, where uh, what we're doing for ourselves is both a mix of kind of our own dog food. So AI we've developed ourselves, right? You can imagine being the marketing team inside a marketing platform. We do a lot of dog fooding, so we use Innovid to manage our paid social, our CTV ads, et cetera. But then we also use things like Salesforce and Marketo and Demandbase, and each of them have come out with their own AI agents kind of embedded in there. So it's a combination of using the ones they've made available, some of our own, and then we also have Claude at an enterprise level to kind of connect a bunch of the dots. So to be able to bring in information, the thousands of pages that we have on our websites, the RFPs, everything we filled out, all that information is able to help us, create content a lot faster and just accelerate various parts of the process.
Oh, so you're all in.
Yes, we're Claude pilled, and we are now. Listen, we're all in terms of adoption and embracing it. We're
Yeah.
far from realizing the full value. I think everyone's probably at that point. If they tell you that they've got everything running optimally, then I've got a bridge to sell them. But the actually that could be an interesting ad campaign idea. Maybe, well,
Go
next
on.
Marketecture Live is in Chicago. Chicago has the Chicago River, which runs through downtown, and there's bridges across each major street.
Right.
That could be, and we've done now like possible. You saw, there was the flying banners. You saw the boats, tugging around digital billboards. Every surface is covered. But I'm thinking we could probably do something in Chicago. I'll have to figure out how we can get on this. Maybe just project something onto the bridges, and somewhere the tagline is something like, um, "If you're if you don't think RAI can help you, I've got this bridge to sell you.
Nice.
Mediaocean.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You got ideas out the wazoo. All right, this is the point where Joe would be like, "This sounds like a great place to wrap," but we're not going to do that. One of the things that we've been thinking about is like we have such amazing guests, and these guests are just not just amazing at their jobs, but they're like awesome people. So we want to start ending or mixing it up on a personal note. So one thing I know about you, Aaron, is you are, in addition to being a world-class CMO and great person, you are a rapper. You freestyled way back in the, do you still freestyle?
So it's more of a party gimmick. I wouldn't call myself a rapper, but yes, I can rap. And back to what we were talking about with frap rap, that was the idea when I would meet with Starcom. They'd come down, they'd get a cup of coffee, and for each person that came, I would also do a rap about them. So yes, that's been part of my shtick for some time.
You should take that on the road. I mean, every day. Like,
Well, starting with the pod, coming soon to the platform near you, frap rap with G Dog.
all right, here's the question for you, the random question for you. We're gonna see how this goes. If you could come back as any rapper, any timeline, any time period, who would it be and why?
Wow. Um, so it's got to be Tupac. He had that playbook. We talked about how in B2B marketing, you got to be creative. You got to find ways to stand out. You got to turn your LinkedIn profile pic 45 degrees to the side. That was Tupac's MO. Like, he was actually um, super smart and strategic about how he got attention and whether or not he actually believed all the things he was saying or the beef he was starting. He knew that it would get people to know him, tune in, buy his records, etc. And the music is just pretty darn good. So for all those
Understatement,
reasons,
yeah.
yeah, put the bandana backwards around my forehead, send me loose, and it's what's the it could be. Well, I'm trying to think of there's like a Tupac 4C AG. There's probably something in there that we could get to. AG in the place to be from the West Side. It's you and me. Got to do it up like Ed to God on the open market pod. And I'm coming back down California dreaming. When the event comes to Chicago, I'm rhyming and stealing. And I go back to the day and I throw it my way. And the B2B marketer got to make that pay. Yay, yay.
Thank God we have interns because we have our clip. That was amazing, man. All right, you can throw me a random one. I'm ready.
All right. So, if you could be in any other profession, what would it be?
If I could be in any other profession today at this stage of my career or
Yes.
anytime. Okay, at this stage of my career. So I've been a VC for 8 years now. I have gotten to understand the game and how it works, and not just like kind of the investment stuff that everybody sees, but just like underlying financial models and financial engineering. And I've fallen in love with investing and the art of investing. I would want to play on maybe a different stage as either a hedge fund manager or a GP at a like big like PE fund. So basically, do what I do and apply it to different instruments, different markets. But I don't talk about it. Maybe I should talk about it more. But I've just become obsessed with investing and sort of the art of money. So doing it at a different scale and in a different game, that would be what I would choose. Maybe the most boring answer anybody can give,
That's
honestly.
okay.
All right, so we're gonna have to fact check that. Joe planted that question, and then he also said I could use a phone a friend to see what someone else thinks about this. So I understand Open Market has an intern named Nick. Is that correct?
Yes, we have our summer intern named Nick.
And is there any relation? His last name's Franchi. So what's going on there?
Nick Franchi from Penn State is our summer intern.
All right. Well, I think we need to see what he would say about your answer to that question. So let's see if I can get him
Oh man.
on FaceTime. We're bringing him in. All right. Technology. Let's see. Okay. Nick. There we are.
Hello?
All right, here we go. So Nick, we were just talking to your dad. We asked him if he could be in any other profession, what would it be? And he gave a really boring answer about some different job in finance.
Sounds like him.
Yeah, and we wanted to see what you had to say about that.
If Eric Franchi could be in any other profession, I think he would be a professional cowboy. He's very, very into country music, and every time we go to Texas, he's always very into it. I think that if there were any position like a cowboy who knows jujitsu, I think that would totally be him.
The Jiu-Jitsu cowboy. That's amazing. Not to be confused with the naked cowboy in Times Square. This is the
No.
Eric. How
Not
many
to,
episodes of Open Market have you recorded? Take a guess.
I think this is like 101.
Wow. All right. So I've probably listened to most of them. I've never heard anything about you and Cowboy. So are we breaking new ground here?
We are breaking new ground thanks to young Nick Franchi.
All right. So hey Nick, while we got you, I'm curious. What exactly does an intern do around here?
Yeah, so basically I'll just be helping out with content creation, managing all the social medias of the pod. I'll be reaching out to some guests, helping with interviews, and yeah, I'll just be generally bringing like new ideas to help connect with the younger audiences and grow the reach of the pod. So.
I love that. Well, you've definitely got some good material here to work with. If you can pick up your AI to get Eric on guitar, belting out some country, bonus points if you can flesh out with my Tupac rap, and we'll take this show on the road. Sorry, Joe, you've been replaced.
Amazing. All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so
Thank you.
yeah, we'll see you, Nick. All right, so that was fun, Eric. I don't know without Joe here, how do we wrap this up?
Um, that's the pod. We'll see you next week, everybody. Appreciate you, Aaron. Thank you, Nick.
Peace.